Welcome to IDD Leader, where human services leaders grow their impact, lead with heart, and build the workplaces our field deserves. I'm your host, Nate Beers. Let's dive in. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. My guess is that there's a good chance that you're a leader at a human services agency that cares about DSP recognition, employee retention, or other things related to the workforce, and you have found the right place. I'm glad you're here. If you're a regular to this podcast, you might recognize that this episode is different than usual. In fact, it is. I recently did a live interactive session with Kris Foss from the University of Minnesota's Institute on Community Integration, and specifically their direct support workforce solutions. We talked about DSP Recognition Week and how to build a culture that does this a lot more than just 1 week out of the year, and specifically how to connect that to retention outcomes. And after the session, many people were asking, can we get a replay of this? Can we go over this or share this with our team? So we talked, and I figured I'll just put it as a podcast episode. So here it is for you to enjoy this way. If you're listening only, it's also on YouTube, and you may enjoy being able to see it as well as hear it, but certainly you can just listen to it and get the information from it. Also worth noting, it was recorded in a different platform than what we normally do the podcast in. And so the audio quality is not quite as good as usual, and the video might be also not quite as good as usual. So please bear with that. But again, we just felt like it was worth it as kind of almost like a bonus episode to share this. Another thing, we have yet another one of these sessions coming up on August 6th. You can get the full scoop, but it talks about the power of stay interviews and how high retention organizations handle that very differently than those that are struggling with keeping their staff. The registration is linked in the show notes. You can also get Kris her email address, and she talks about a resource that also is linked up in the show notes. So as you go through the session, basically anything you might need is probably in the show notes. And I want to just highlight that right now. Well, without further ado, let me share this awesome conversation and session that we just hosted together.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
My name's Kris Foss. I'm the Director of Direct Support Workforce Solutions. Our team is with the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota. Always a lot to get out. And just a little bit about my background. I spent most of my career, about 17, 18 years, with a large nonprofit provider organization that served people with disabilities, primarily IDD, throughout Connecticut and New York. And there I did a lot. I was a leader for HR and workforce. And so really happy to be working with the University of Minnesota, because now I get to work with a lot of provider organizations across the country and provider associations. And little fun fact, I'm also a trained herbalist. So when we first moved up here to New Hampshire, I opened up an herbal apothecary and gift shop. And well, I closed that a few years ago because I got drawn back into workforce, my first passion. Not unusual to find me making potions, lotions, elderberry syrup, tea blends from plants in my backyard. So little bit about me. And I'm really excited today to be talking about employee recognition. And Nate's going to talk a lot of kind of big picture strategy and some important foundational things. I'm going to get into some nuts and bolts to help kind of put those things into action. And hoping that we can flip the script a little bit on how we think of thank you and employee recognition from something that's nice to do to something that's a business imperative, a really effective retention strategy. I'm going to throw it over to Nate to introduce himself and get us going.
Yeah. So I'm Nate Beers. I founded IDD Leader, which is a podcast, and then I do training, especially for frontline supervisors and then higher level leaders as well, across to agencies across the country. And I have a background. I was in church ministry for about a decade. And if we're doing fun facts, Kris, we didn't do this last time, but fun facts.
I know. I thought
I like it. No,
because I was
good.
out in the garden.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
There's I have 8 children, and that's not a joke. I have actual 8 kids. My wife and I were blessed with a large family, and our oldest, we go from 19 down to 3 months old tomorrow. So we are in
Yeah.
every parenting stage kind of at once. So there you go, kind of a fun fact.
And a
Um,
little sleep deprived, maybe.
yeah, if you see like bags under the eyes, it's a lifestyle over here on my end.
Yeah.
But anyhow, just one or two quick things. A lot of what we're going to do is having people, when we ask you things, will be jumping in through the chat. Just because there's enough folks on here, it's not as easy to do interactive. There may be a moment or two when Kris or I do say for someone to jump in, verbally. But so if you can generally keep your mics muted, that'd be fantastic. And then one other thing, before we get started, I also want to make a prediction. Okay, if we were to spend the next hour sharing 15 employee recognition ideas, my guess is that most of you would leave thinking, yeah, we've tried that already. And honestly, that is part of the problem, because most organizations are not suffering from a shortage of ideas. It's, in our opinion, it's a shortage of conditions that make recognition meaningful. Now, we already know this, but recognition is not a silver bullet, it's an amplifier. So if people are already feeling valued, then recognition amplifies that feeling. When they don't feel valued, though, recognition often falls really flat. So our goal today is to focus on missing pieces. That is what we thought would be the biggest gift to everyone that is joining us. So that's what we are hoping to do. And by the end of our time together, we hope that you leave with a clearer picture of what's helping, what's getting in the way, and some very practical and even some tactical things. Kris especially is going to go into some of that. Steps you could take immediately to start to strengthen retention, reduce burnout, and just to help everyone at your organization feel valued. So we'll dive in right now. Well, hopefully this is not the vibe at your organization, as this meme so nicely shows us. But sometimes I think that message does kind of inadvertently kind of
Yeah.
come through, that we're doing our best here. We did we did it all. So yeah, hopefully that's not too much happening in your organization. But here's where I wanted us to start. Most recognition programs, in my opinion, if they fail, they're failing for one simple reason. It's that they're trying to add on appreciation on top of an employee experience that doesn't actually feel appreciative. It's kind of like if you were to put frosting on a burnt cake. I don't know about you, I've done a few burnt cakes in my time, and it doesn't really matter how much you try to dress it up, it still just tastes burnt. So the frosting is not the problem. The recognition in this case isn't the problem, but then sometimes the cake is, or the culture. So we could say it this way: recognition isn't the root, recognition is the fruit, and culture is the root. If people feel valued throughout the year, then recognition feels sometimes meaningful, extremely meaningful, and it lands well. But if people aren't feeling valued throughout the year, then recognition can actually end up feeling very hollow. And that's where a lot of organizations get stuck. They try to improve recognition without improving the experience that recognition is sitting on top of. So before we talk about a few specific recognition strategies, I thought it'd be worth talking about the experience people are having every single day. So here's one of the biggest challenges. Most leaders that I've ever talked to genuinely care about their staff. So the problem is not caring, or even effort for that matter. They care, and there's a lot of effort. But the problem is often that the employee's experience of the culture through daily interactions, and that doesn't always line up with what the leadership intentions are. And I'll show you what I mean here with these examples on the screen. We value work-life balance. That could be what the messaging is. But then sometimes the other messaging that the DSP hears is, but don't even think about using PTO next month, or at least not, the next 2 weeks, because we're so short-staffed. Or maybe you've heard the phrase, or maybe you've even uttered the phrase, let's give it up for our weekend warriors. But sometimes in that case, the DSPs hear what they have experienced, which is, don't bother your supervisor on the weekends because they're not available. So the point isn't whether these statements are fair. I know it could be a little bit of a low blow on the right column, but the point is that employees interpret the culture through their experience. That's the lens that they're going to have to interpret it. And their experience is always going to be louder than the messaging. So if the experience says one thing and the poster says another, people believe the experience. And that's why recognition has to be the overflow, has to be the overflow of the culture. There's no substitute for culture. So now we'll just do a quick little exercise here. I like to call this the rock test. I could give you a long list of practices, but instead of doing that, let's do this. I want to give you a filter. You can, take this one with you. Let's just imagine for a moment, Dwayne Johnson decides he's going to take a year off from movies or wrestling or whatever other, VIP stuff he does, and he's going to become a DSP at your agency. And he's going to write a daily blog about his experience. Now, just for the sake of this exercise, please assume that he passes the drug test, which, good thing we don't usually test for steroids or PEDs. But before you make a decision when it comes to the employee experience, before you launch a policy, before you rush someone through orientation to get them on the floor and in ratio, before you ask someone to pick up another shift, ask yourself this one question. This is the rock test. Would I still do this if the rock worked here? Because every practice sends a message. Every process sends a message. Every supervisor interaction sends a message. And the rock test helps us see those messages more clearly. And speaking of being clear, I do want to clarify. The goal isn't to pass the rock test because the rock is special. The goal is to pass the rock test because every DSP deserves to be treated like they're important. And that is the difference between having the icing on a delicious cake versus the burnt cake that we talked about a couple minutes ago. So now I want to hear from you in the chat. What's one thing that The Rock would probably write about in his daily blog? He would complain about if he worked at your agency for a year. Could be onboarding, could be the scheduling, could be communication. I know this is a little, takes a little guts to share this, but I'm curious what might show up on Dwayne Johnson's blog. Maybe it's how PTO requests get handled, but go ahead. Let's just put it in there. Okay, yeah, there we go.
Communication about the schedule. Yeah.
Scheduling. Okay, yep. We're hitting.
Scheduling.
Yeah.
Staff drama. Good
Ooh,
one.
manager's favorite few overall. That
Okay,
Kris,
so
you're totally going to touch on that in a little bit.
I am.
Yeah, not enough
Hi,
staff.
Casey.
Yes, I hear you on that one, Lisa. Coverage, communication, Patrick. Yeah. Joanne Furman kind of also talked about favoritism there. Scheduling adjustments. Taya, yep.
Mandatory OT. Getting mandated to stay, right?
Yes. Splitting duties. That's insightful. Yeah. Yeah. Can you be in two places at once? Yeah. Short staff. Yep. Communication.
I have mastered 2 different places at once, Nate. It's the third that usually messes me up,
that's
I
good.
have
Well,
to say, which is probably true of most people on this call.
Yeah.
Leave request freezes. Yeah. What you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aggressive
fine. Yeah.
clients.
Sometimes feeling like you just got in way over your head. Like, hey, you sat through a 1 hour training about challenging behaviors, and then all of a sudden you're like with someone that, is on a different league. So, yeah. So here's the thing. What just showed up in the chat? Oh, look at that. Secondhand trauma, compassion fatigue. That's insightful too. Yeah, that's another insightful.
Yeah.
But what's showing up is that interesting. These aren't actually recognition problems. They're leadership experience problems. I don't mean leaders aren't experienced. I mean people's experience of their leadership or of their even just the general employee experience. And that's exactly kind of where Kris is going to take us next. Because if staff don't consistently feel valued in the day-to-day interactions with their supervisors especially, then recognition programs only do so much. So like I said earlier, recognition is the fruit. Culture is the root. Now to you, Kris.
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah. And when Nate and I connected a little earlier this week about our session, and I told him he had no idea about this, but The Rock is one of my absolute favorites. So my husband and I just celebrated 36 years of marriage this week. And I can tell you that for probably 34 of those years, it has just been very well known and understood that if I have the opportunity to date The Rock, I get a pass on that. He is okay with that. So totally, I loved that, Casey. Thank you. Yeah. If I loved that he incorporated a rock test. I'm like very blown away by that. So anyway, yeah, and so I think what you just said, Nate, is so important. There has to be a foundation. And with that, there also has to be not every thank you is created equally, right? So we can say thank you, we can tell people, that we appreciate them, but if it doesn't land right, if it doesn't, we don't use it as a strategic way of communicating what's valuable and how what we need people to do and our expectations, then we're missing a really big opportunity. Um, that culture is so huge. We all have been there with the year, once a year DSP week, and we try to do things throughout the year, but it's that day-to-day experience that everybody has that's really important. So I'm going to kind of take it to some of the nuts and bolts of effective recognition. And I'm going to start with three components of it. I'll work through a few others as we go. And then this is just to let you know, this is part of a training or a professional development for leadership and of all levels in an organization that I do. And it's fun and it's engaging and I'm not saying that because it's me, but it gets people really involved in it and gives them some practical tips and tools and some real practice at it. Because not everybody just instinctively is good at saying thank you effectively and consistently. So I'm going to get into some of the nuts and bolts. So the first thing I would say is that effective recognition is timely and specific, and it has no buts. So I'll talk about the no buts rule in a minute. So before we get started, I did want to say we've got so many people on the call. I want to take the opportunity to give Nate some praise. I always like connecting with Nate. We get to work together now pretty often. And I just want to tell you, Nate, that you absolutely rock. I just want to tell you that you're rocking it, man. And, so I really appreciate that. So I just wanted in front of everybody to be able to say that. So
Thanks. I'm putting that on my resume now.
yeah, that you rock.
Kris
Now
Foss says I rock.
I rock. So that's something. So, but I want to ask you, and this is putting you on the spot a little bit, and maybe if people in chat want to throw something in, is like if Casey or Joanne wanted to rock, or they wanted me to see them as being someone who's really rocking it, can you tell them a little bit about what I value, that I'm why I've decided that you rock? Can you describe to them what you do?
My best guess was actually that I'm still rocking the headphones, from like the iPods from the early 2000s, but I could be wrong.
That is part of it. But see, there's the guess part, right? So if Lisa wanted to make sure, if Lisa was like, "Hey, I want Kris to think I rock. I want to rock. I think I rock." I'm not giving her any idea of how to replicate what it is that why I think Nate Beers rocks. And so we need to be really specific, and we need to do it in a timely way, not wait for annual appraisals or, some vague mention in a couple months. So my example, if you guys don't mind me kind of using an example that I'll carry through a little bit, is, you know, uh, let's see, who can I pick on a little bit? Heather, I just really want to thank you for using your personal car last Thursday to get Janet to her salon appointment when she missed the bus. That's really important to her to get, looking spruce up and getting her hair done. Plus, it's where she visits with her friends. So really appreciate that. So I just let Heather know that I appreciated it. Now, if Dawn or Michelle or others hear that, or Nate, they know what was important, what was valued, that, Heather took it upon herself. She used her personal car, still got Janet where she needed to go, and all was well in the world. And I said last Thursday, so it's all about catching people in the moment, right? And to reinforce the behavior and the expectations of the role. Now, before I jump to or throw it back over to Nate, the no buts rule is a really big one. So, and yeah, I guess big buts, but we don't want any buts in recognition. So I'm going to kind of add on to that example. If I was using that example and said, I really appreciate that you used your personal car and Heather, and came in, and you used your personal card to get Janet to the salon appointment, and when she missed the bus, really appreciate that. But if you'd gotten her up on time, she wouldn't have missed the bus. So what did I just do? Heather, are you still feeling happy about that? Appreciated? No, it's that old adage, right? Anything before but is BS. We've just undone that. And I don't know about you, but I've been on the other side of some of those buts before, and it kind of just deflates the whole thing. So no buts in recognition. Those are my first three nuts and bolts. Timely, specific, conveys what's important, no buts.
Yeah. So if I heard you right, Kris, you don't like big butts and you can't lie, huh?
I cannot lie. I don't like big butts.
In fact, no buts
You
about it,
got
right?
it. You
Yeah.
got it.
But I think actually just to I guess can I ask you a question about this?
Oh, yeah.
So do you think that it's the best to do that some of the time, all the time, most of the time? Like what would you say as far as if you were like just suppose that you're training a room full of frontline supervisors, or if you're
Yeah.
training a manager who's like, okay, I got like three brand new frontline supervisors, they've never done this job before, and I'm supposed to help them,
Yeah.
coach them how to do their job better.
Yeah.
What would be like, how can someone know if they've done it kind of the right way or a way that's more effective or not, and how often should they look at doing that, do you think?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think consistency is key. So when you see like positive behavior or positive, people doing the role well, encouraging it by even if there's nobody else in the room for that person, you're reinforcing what's valued. If there's other team members in the room, I think that even goes a little further. I think you can get carried away with it. So I think finding a balance, but being consistent with it. So it's not just once a month or it's and a friend of mine gave me an old a tip once that like I said, it's not instinctual for everybody, and sometimes people have to really plan for it and think about it a little bit. So this person put like three or four pennies in their pocket. I don't know if we can still get pennies, but maybe you put nickels or dimes. I don't know. Um, in their left pocket, and then each time they recognized somebody or caught somebody doing something, they transferred it into their other pocket. So even if they ended up with two left over at the end of the day, they at least knew they did something during the day and that they recognized people. So I thought that was a really good kind of marker, especially if people need the practice or it's not something they naturally do. Just in the middle of all the fires that we put out on a daily basis, making it a priority.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Um, I'm gonna just throw in one other thing too. So I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm an avid learner. I was listening to a podcast, no joke, this morning that was about how do you show appreciation. And I didn't realize that was the episode until I was like halfway, like until it was in it. But one of the things
Right.
he said is this idea of that there's a certain kind of I forget, he said something like appreciation gossip, which is where you
Hmm.
tell somebody else the same thing that you just described, but like Kris, if I, whoever your boss is, right? If I wrote an email to your boss and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, Kris just, you know, took Janet to the hair appointment in her personal car. She went way above and beyond in doing that, and I just wanted to let you know she's doing an outstanding job in her role." That usually then that circles back to the person, and that can be a really powerful way for them to not just feel the appreciation, like, "Oh, well, you say that because I'm in front of you right now," but they kind of, it sort of has like a double impact because then it also
Right.
makes them look good. So it's kind of, doubly
Right.
effective. So that was a kind of cool hack that I just heard today.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that. It kind of reminds me, I've in other sessions I've talked about like, we always try to think about the big kind of outreach or the big impact thing. But one of the things that I found like was really effective was, by having somebody mention that somebody else, told them about that they were doing a great job or something, it has that double impact. I had somebody sending notes to a person's home or sending it home with them, just a handwritten note saying like, I heard you did a great job on this project, like from an executive director or a leader. And I think no matter how old we get, there's still that refrigerator effect, I call it,
mm,
where we want to like put it on our fridge with a magnet, like having the smiley face graded paper. And I think even as adults, we need that. And so That what you just described kind of reminded me of that. If my
Yeah.
boss tells me that somebody else noticed me doing a great job, that's like that, like you said, that double impact.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
that's a great point. And even what you just said about using handwritten, um,
Yeah,
if I, for I don't know, probably in any given group, like a half or at least a third to half of the group is more introverted, and so sometimes it plays to
yeah,
some people's strengths. A man having an introverted boss can be the best thing ever because they might be the best note writer at writing thoughtful notes and thank yous and things like that. So I think
yeah,
part of it, even just like play to your own strengths, or if again, if you're coaching a team of supervisors, encourage them play to your own strengths, guys. Like we need it.
yeah,
You want to be timely, you want to be specific, and don't have a but. However, play
yeah.
to your strengths. So yeah, no, that's cool. All right,
Right,
well,
yeah, and it comes across as more authentic if people are playing to their strengths. And thanks, yeah, Casey pointed out the communicative strategy that listener hearing but will negate anything that came before it.
yes, it
So
will.
true. So
Yes, it will.
yeah, thanks, Nate. I appreciate that. I think those are all really good points, and I'll talk later about kind of making sure that we see people and hear them and know what they value as part of recognition. But I think that's a great point. Is each supervisor, each people leader is going to have a different style, and that's okay.
Yeah,
And it comes across more authentic.
yeah, no, absolutely. I really appreciate this section, Kris, but just kidding.
But we're going to move on.
Okay.
That's a
Oh,
big but,
bonusly,
Nate.
cool.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
is a big button. You don't like it. That's right. Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Cool. Don, way to drop that into bonusly. I've
Yeah.
looked into that.
Bonusly.
Um,
Yeah.
there's a couple of different there's a number of different versions of things like that. That's totally cool.
Yeah.
I hope some agencies are doing that. All right.
Yeah.
So as we're jumping into this next section of the content, I want to ask you guys a quick question in the chat. When people leave your organization, what's the reason that they usually give? You can just drop like even one or two words. We'll probably all know what you mean.
Yeah.
But when when people leave your organization, what's the reason they usually give? Higher
Right.
pay, pay,
Yeah. Pay more
more
money.
money. Huh. It
More
almost seems like
money.
there's a theme emerging here. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, better pay. Monday through
Wages,
Friday.
management.
Oh, sure. Wages. Manager. Okay. Yep.
Managing, bad
Weekends.
managers,
Yep.
better shifts.
Managers. Yep.
Yeah. Pay schedule,
Hmm.
supervisor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are some of the biggies right here.
Room for
Um,
growth. Yeah.
one Yeah, it often the schedule, the pay, and the manager are probably some of the three biggies. Sometimes you'll find something like the commute, but I mean, it
Yeah.
shouldn't have been a surprise when they signed up. But oh, challenging
Right.
behaviors. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes, sometimes it can
Managers.
just feel like oh, work-life balance. Okay, we're getting to some now. We're starting to get into some of these other ones too. This is good, real good.
We'll just
Uh,
take our list of future sessions right from all of you.
actually, yes, that's not a bad idea.
Yes.
Why don't you copy
Yes.
and paste this real quick? No, okay.
All right.
Um, overworked, underpaid. Huh. I thought that just
Yeah.
was human services. Okay, no, just kidding. Slightly cynical jokes that aren't even funny. But here's the thing most of these answers are probably true. But I also want to suggest one thing, and this came up in some of them, is that well, I'll just float this. You tell me what you think of it. I've never had someone quit because their supervisor forgot to give them specific praise on a Tuesday. Nobody quits over Tuesday. However, people do quit over 300 Tuesdays. And frankly, in our field, it's actually like the first 90 days. They quit after like 3 Tuesdays. But they quit after many small moments when they felt unseen, not set up for success, moments when they felt unsupported, maybe moments when they felt disconnected, moments when they weren't sure anyone noticed how hard they were even trying. And those moments accumulate. And sometimes they accumulate faster than we'd like to admit. And eventually, people often start telling themselves a story, which is something to the effect of maybe this place doesn't really value me. Now, here's what's interesting is that most of the time, it's not what leaders or even the direct supervisor had intended at all. Most supervisors I've talked to, in fact, the vast, vast majority, they're in the right field and they are deeply caring people. But caring and showing care are not the same thing. And to me, that brings us to what I think is one of the bigger misconceptions about employee recognition. And feel free to disagree with this one. But here it is. Organizations often try to make people feel valued through recognition programs. And don't get me wrong, I love recognition programs. But recognition initiatives don't work nearly as well when staff don't already feel valued by the person they interact with most often, their supervisor. I mean, truly, their supervisor is the biggest lens through which they see the broader organization. Another way of putting this would be to say recognition can amplify value, but it can't replace value. That's a great point, Marie. I see what you wrote there. Yeah, that's a great point. Staff need to feel valued by their frontline supervisor. And for that to happen, of course, supervisors need to know how to show value consistently, right? Because caring is not the same as showing care. I mean, this is probably a ridiculous example, but you can feel a lot of care if someone has a medical crisis, but if you're not trained to know how to handle it right, they might not be experiencing that care very much at all, or at least not in the ways that would be most effective. All medical crises aside, this actually happens in daily interactions so frequently, because caring is not the same thing as showing care. And when those drift apart, turnover starts to grow in the shadows. Now, what we're gonna do, and I'll put this in the chat here too. There's a link. You can either use a QR code if you want to do it on your phone, or if you want to just have another browser window open, you can do that. We're going to do a quick diagnostic. We're actually going to take the time to do it now because it's really short. It's easy. It takes about 2 minutes. So as I'm talking, you can start filling it out. It's called the 7 Quiet Danger Signs. What it helps to identify is whether there might be leadership patterns quietly pushing people away, even when no one's intending to. And as you're starting to click in this and click through this, I'll read a couple of real-world examples, again, as you're going through this. Here's a quote that might be something that's said or at the very least thought. I only hear from my supervisor when something's wrong. Right? Like if they look at the phone, they see the supervisor's phone number, they think, well, that means something's wrong, or they need more coverage. And that's the only point of contact they're having. Okay. Another example. Nobody said anything until it became a huge issue. Another example. The only time people get noticed is when something goes wrong. Those comments, they're not usually signs of bad people. They're signs of leadership systems that aren't working as well as they need to. Again, the link's in the chat. Hopefully you're starting to fill it out. I want to encourage you just to answer as honestly as you can. It's not about judgment. Like, listen, we all know that every organization, just like every human, we are works in progress. And sometimes it feels like it's 2 steps forward and 4 steps backwards. So I was just talking with an organization a couple weeks ago, and they had a whole situation where multiple staff left all at the same exact time and put them seriously in a shortage. But anyhow, this is just meant to be a snapshot. This diagnostic, the 7 warning signs or 7 quiet danger signs, meant to be a snapshot. When you first see your results, so you'll click through, you'll see your results. I want to just encourage you, make sure you click the submit button at the bottom. You'll still get your results. Those will get emailed to you with sort of like an interpretation afterwards. But today, you'll get the results today. But go ahead and click that submit button at the bottom of the second page. The first page is all the statements, and you're just checking yes or no. Second page, you're going to want to click that. I'll give you guys another minute to continue filling this out. As you are, my hope is for this to bring insight. That's the goal, is that this helps to bring some insight, because sometimes, especially when we've been in kind of that just vicious cycle where there's high vacancy, high turnover, so there's the demands of just even keeping coverage needs can often make us feel like we don't even have close to our best case scenario happening. But in those environments, sometimes what happens is something that's not really that healthy can get a little bit normal. And then it can stick around like a dynamic. One that I see a lot, I think it's number 4 on there, but is that, supervisors avoid things until they blow up. I mean, I've seen that play out, not just with frontline supervisors. I've seen that play out in executive teams. I mean, this is something it's a very human issue. But yeah, so the goal with this, so go ahead and finish it up. I think I'm just getting some notifications. So I think some of you already, are filling it out right now and getting it through it just fine. Here's what I hope you don't take away from it, especially from the results that you got, especially if you scored higher than you'd like. Maybe you scored and you feel like, wow, things are better than I thought, which either means you've got some really good foundations happening there, or you're out of touch. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but sometimes that does happen, just being completely honest. It's a little bit like that moment, like I'm in good health. And then like I get blood work and the doc's like, yeah, about that. So sometimes we might not be as in touch as we want to be, but hopefully your results are as accurate as they can be. But what I don't want you to take away is that there's bad supervisors at your organization. I mean, yeah, maybe there's like one sour apple, possibly. Sure, that should just be a situation that's dealt with. But usually what it means is that the people trying to lead, they're doing it without enough support. And on a different webinar, it might have been the last one we did together, I asked, like, how many hours have you, when you were first a supervisor, were you trained on how to manage people? And for many people in the chat, their response was 0 hours, right? Or maybe like I clicked through one training on it. But the actual mechanics of, well, how do you have a performance conversation? Or how do you handle this? You know, there's 2 people on my team that are in conflict. Most of the time, what, you know, if the results aren't just shining and beautiful from this assessment, it's usually because good people are trying to lead without enough support. And what's cool about that is it's a very solvable problem. Very, very solvable problem. And so I will ask which one of these, and now you've already clicked past it, so now you're like, well, I don't remember what they were. But any word or phrase that you remember, put it in the chat. Would you say that stuck out to you? Which one hit closest to home? We'll just put it that way. It doesn't mean it's actually happening. You just have a friend who has it's happening at their agency. Well, but which one hit closest to home? Just go ahead and put that in the chat because I'd love to know any word or phrase that you remember from it. Having difficult conversations. Oh my gosh, totally. Not even sure who my supervisor is. Yes, I hear you guys on all of these for sure. And part of why I want to do this exercise together is that a lot of times it's easy if I'm in an organizational leadership role, which it's easy to feel like we're the only ones struggling with these issues, which is kind of like one fallacy, or the other extreme fallacy, which is, well, this is just the way it is in human services. So we just have to suck it up and deal with it. And actually, those are both false, which is really hopeful. It's really cool because we can do things about this. So in that initial assessment and then in the email follow-up, if you want help identifying which of these patterns might be contributing the most to turnover and to vacancies, burnout, retention challenges, any of this stuff, I offer a free 30-minute supervisor stability strategy session. I've actually done it with a couple people that are on the call. I love doing these. We just look at your results together. We talk about what's been happening in your organization. And then I try to just give like, not just general advice, but I try to look for 1 to 2 very specific practical next steps that you can take. It's there's no pressure on it. I mean, I enjoy these conversations and they're really valuable. In fact, I was on one with a CEO like about a month or so ago. And she, at the end of it, she's like, I didn't realize how much, and then she went into, I'm not going to share all this, but she went to a very specific dynamic that was happening that she like connected 2 seemingly separate situations and realized, oh my gosh, same root. And so if someone leaves with an insight like that, to me, that's awesome. So it's a thoughtful conversation, focus on helping your team to become more stable, make things more sustainable for you. And you can actually just book it right through Calendly. Like we don't have to have like 20 emails back and forth to find a good time. And if you want to bring more people on the team, you're welcome to do that as well, which again, some people do it. Just depends on who it is. I meet one-on-one. I bet with whole executive teams together on this. It's up to you. But I want to offer that because frankly, in one webinar, we're not going to get to the bottom of everything. And sometimes that outside perspective is one of the best gifts we can get. So anyhow, all right. I see the hook coming stage right. So Kris, let me
Gonna mute all.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me bounce it
No,
right
this
back
is really
over to
good.
you.
And I think it leads into some of what I'm going to talk about too is, you know, it really, that people leader, whether it's a frontline supervisor, whether it's a manager, whether it's a director, anybody who's leading people, I think that's that critical interaction, right? It's always nice to hear from the executive director or others about, you know, thank you all for doing a great job or something that's happened, but it's that day-to-day, those day-to-day interactions, and we've all been there. If you have a strong supervisor who really is able to do this and appreciate you and you feel seen, you're feeling supported. If they're not strong and they're not supported, then that passes down. So I think, you know, the one thing I wanted to kind of the few things I wanted to end on were I talked to a lot of managers, frontline supervisors, leaders in my work and in my former work. And some of the things when we talk about recognition that I hear very often is like, well, no one thanks me. Right? Well, I still show up and do my job. Like, they need to just show up. And I get that. If you're not feeling appreciated, it's really hard sometimes to muster that for other people, or that might be the model you had for leadership. So that's one thing I hear. I hear it's not enough. And I also understand that we've got some big challenges. You guys are all, everybody that I know is advocating constantly for increased wages. We know we're looking at wages, benefits. We heard it in what you talked about earlier, were some of the challenges that people are leaving. When you feel like there's this big mountain, saying thank you or a small gift card or a pizza, even if done effectively and you follow all these things, feels like, oh, it's not enough. So we kind of do that analysis paralysis where we don't do anything because we feel like it's not that big impact statement that we can make. It's their job. I hear this often, and I don't think it's meant to be mean-spirited. It's just that, especially depending, like, growing up, I heard like you do your job well, and a lot of us kind of came up in that. And so things like, well, they use their personal car. Yeah, well, that was on their job description. Or someone's coming in, it's the person you rely on. They come in every shift. They come in a little early or right on time. They're there. They're the ones that you rely on. We need to make sure that yes, it's their job, but if we wait for all the moments when someone saves someone's life through CPR or something like that, then we're really missing the opportunity to make sure that the people that are showing up, because the reality is not everybody does, the people that are doing their job feel valued and seen. And so that is a big one that I see where people are like, well, that's their job. And I'm too busy. And this is legitimate too. People leaders are really, really swamped. Especially, I feel like frontline supervisors are some of the busiest people in our whole ecosystem. And so and this comes into play when we think of thank you and think of appreciation and recognition as a nice to do. So it's like, I'm really busy, but I intend to do that. I'm going to do it when I have some downtime. And that comes from it not coming, it's what gets measured gets done, right? So if it's a priority from leadership, if it's part of the culture, if it's prioritized, then it's going to get done. And so that's how we start building a culture, is like making it a priority, making it a part of our everyday. We operate on people feeling valued. And then I don't want to play favorites is probably the biggest. And I heard that,
That came up
we heard
earlier.
that early on. It was one of your best. And so couple things on that. That being specific, that levels the playing field. If I said that Nate rocked, yeah, it would be really easy for all of you to think, well, she just likes Nate better than the rest of us. And that wouldn't be wrong because I'm not telling you what he's doing that's right, and you don't have a chance to replicate that. You can't, so it's easy to think that's favorite. The next kind of scenario I just want to throw out there about favorites, and I do this in the training and a little more extensive way, but I'm going to pick on a few people if you don't mind. Actually, only one person's really going to get picked on. I think I'm going to pick my friend Janet because I think she won't kill me. Casey, I know you could take it too, but I'm going to say Janet is on my team. Claire, maybe you're on my team. How about that if you're there? I think Claire's on there. Um, and Jonathan, you're on my team. So we've got 3 team members. Jonathan is really my star. And I know I'm not supposed to say rocks, but I'll tell you, Jonathan always shows up. He shows up a little early. If teammates need him, he's the one they count on. I count on him a lot to show new people the ropes. He's patient with people we support. He's always looking for new ways to make sure that we're meeting people's goals and that people are getting to do what they want, what they choose for their life. And so Jonathan's like that star player. Um, Janet, well, Janet's kind of my slacker. I just got to say, Janet's my slacker. Janet shows up sometimes. Janet's on time couple times a week. And when she shows up, teammates quickly learn that Janet's not going to go above and beyond for them. She's not going to help out. She's kind of there. She's warm in the seat. She's picking up her pay, right? And who else did I say I was picking on? Claire, right? Is my I'm sorry, I'm like scrolling through all the names. Claire, you're my brand new person. You just started 2 weeks ago, and you've had the opportunity, or 3 weeks ago, and you just had the opportunity to work with both Janet and Jonathan, and you've seen them both in action. And so now we're having a team meeting. And, I'm like, I'm your supervisor. And I'm like, you know what, you guys, I just really want to take a moment to tell you that you guys are doing a great job. Uh, you're all really, I couldn't do this without you. You're all star players. I say it all the time. My team are rock stars. Right. So Janet, here's your Dunkin' Donuts gift card. Claire, here's your dunks. Jonathan, here's your dunks. Everybody gets a gift card. So I feel good because I didn't play favorites, and nobody's going to think I'm playing favorites. But Janet, what did I just communicate to you?
I don't have to do too much. I'll put it that way. I don't have to do too much to get the same recognition as the people who bust their butts every day, right?
Yeah, you're still going to get in your mocha latte or whatever at Dunks, so you're good. And Claire, what did I say to you? You're the new person. That's even the kind of
That it's okay to sometimes be late,
yeah.
like Janet.
Right. You can be Janet. Yep, you can be a
Yep.
Janet too. And Jonathan, what about you? My star. What did I just do?
You just told me that what I do doesn't matter because you compensated me the same as everybody else. So
Yep.
why am I busting my butt if everybody else is getting the same recognition?
Right. And there you go. And I think those are some of the statements you'd start to see on Nate's snapshot that he shared with you, right? Is that's where we start to kind of lose people and we convey to new people. So that's the way, specific, pointing people out when they're doing things right. We can work, I can quietly work with Janet on the side, maybe get her to where she's showing up. But I want to make sure that, especially that Claire sees that what Jonathan's doing, that's replicable. She can do it and it's valued and it's seen and recognized. And so that's my big takeaway here is that it really, supervisors need some support with this. This doesn't come instinctively to everybody or naturally. So sometimes it's practice. They need the tools to do it. They need to run through scenarios and it takes some time. And that's how you start to build it so that that day-to-day interaction is positive. So Nate, I think we can go to my next to last slide. We're winding up. Last two components of effective recognition. If any of you want to throw in your mission statement into chat, that would be great. But it's, I think of like Jiffy Lube. I don't mean to pick on them, but they've got a great mission. It's to go beyond oil changes alone to help alleviate the anxiety that routine maintenance can bring for your vehicle. Look, I feel anxious every time they try to upsell me a new filter, but it's a great mission. But corporations have to really think about how do we engage our employees in our mission? Like, how do we inspire them? We've got that just inherently in our missions, right? This is from my old Stomping Grounds Ability Beyond. Our mission is to discover, build, and celebrate the ability in all people. I worked with an organization that had, our mission, their goals, their lives, our mission. So, we've got these inspiring vision statements or missions, but they stay on the wall sometimes. So effective recognition can really help us take those mission statements off the wall and put them into practice where people see how the day-to-day actions they take meet that mission or align with that mission. So going back to that example about using the personal car, right? And that Sue still got to her, or Janet still got to her salon appointment. If I took that a step forward and said, that really exemplifies our mission to discover and build and celebrate the ability in all people. Or I'll go back to the other mission. Maybe that meets the example a little bit. That really meets our mission of their dreams, their goals, our mission. So Sue, it's important that Sue gets to that salon appointment. So this is a really great way, recognition, to start helping people learn how to take what they're recognizing people for, those day-to-day moments, and align it with the mission and show them that how they contribute to that. And that really inspires people. And then my last point is reflecting that the person feels that they're seen and valued. And we can do that. I mean, Connor, I might be calling you out right now and you're like, oh, this is my worst nightmare, right? Some people like public praise. Other people are like, that is my worst nightmare. I wake up sweating thinking about that. Some people love celebrating their birthday. I will declare the whole month of May my birthday. I want all the balloons, the cake, chocolate, by the way, if anybody wants to make me anything. Um, Other people, whether it's a cultural reason, a religious reason, or maybe experiential, they don't want to celebrate their birthdays. So we need to think about ways, quick surveys of staff, quick inventory when you're onboarding new staff is a great way to show people right off the bat that we thank people here. We want to know how you want to be recognized and appreciated. And so there's a lot of different things you can do, but it's important that when you're recognizing people that you're kind of incorporating how they like to be recognized and for what types of things. So that's kind of my last thing, and I know we're close to time. Um, I wanted to be able to give people a few minutes to ask questions, so we'll hang on after too, but wanted to share this. Nate, I don't know if you have access to the notes, if you could throw the link into the
Yes. Yep.
chat as well. But I do deliver a professional development opportunity about building a culture of recognition. I will tell you that it involves rubber duckies, which are fun. But it's really that kind of overall reasons why we need to make this a priority and a business imperative, and then working with people leaders to help them practice, go through scenarios, understand how to effectively recognize. I offer it in person, love to come see you, but also live online because I know that's an important option. Can do it in a 2-hour thing, or I've done half-day workshops. So if that's interesting to you at all, you can use the QR code, click on the link that Nate shared, and I'd be glad. This is just expressing interest, so I can contact you and say, hey, let's talk about it and see if it's something that you're interested in doing. And I have that offer code there mainly because if anybody contacts me through our Leadership Lens series, I'm going to work with you on pricing as well. So wanted to throw that out there. Don't mean to be a big sales pitch, but love talking about recognition. So would love to work with you. Let's throw it out for questions, and we'll stick around past 5, but please, if you feel, and join us next time on August 6th, 4 o'clock, same time, Eastern time. 4 Eastern, we've got a great topic plan. Nate, you have that, you want to kind of talk about the topic quickly?
Oh my gosh.
Do you have
Yes.
it nearby? I know,
I,
I'm like, I don't have it nearby. I know it's on engagement, stay surveys. We're going to talk about utilizing stay surveys to really engage your staff. And, we talk about exit interviews all the time, but hey, they're out the door already. So how can you utilize stay interviews with your staff to proactively address people that you might be hearing some of those statements from that Nate shared with you earlier. So how can we proactively kind of address both individually for people and maybe trends we're seeing across the organization? So do you think I did that justice, Nate?
You did it justice. We had so many
All right.
iterations that my mind went blank for a second, but what we landed on was the stay interview advantage, what high retention organizations learn before employees decide to leave.
Hey, that sounds good. It almost sounds like we know what we're doing.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
fundamentally at a heart level or at the gut level, it's about playing offense instead of defense, because retention often feels like we're playing defense. And so this is like, how can we flip that script and play offense? It's not entirely different than our talk today when it comes to recognition of how do we, bake the right cake or not have butts in our recognition, or these kinds of, the rock test, the different things we talked about today. So
Love the rock test.